name is Jim Worthen. The show's Worthen One-on-One. Besides my Western hat, I used to be a cowboy, by the way. We can talk about that some other time, but that was 30 years ago. Our show is one that I've done with my guest going back to about 1990. I remember our big prediction that came true, like tonight's was the Republican takeover by 52 votes in the House of Representatives.
Seats, yep.
Yeah, for, I mean, how many years? It had been 40 years, I think.
Yep.
Bob Lovgren, he says, I'm not a political pundit. Yes, you are. He is one of has a basis in history and politics far beyond what you probably see anywhere. And I'm proud to be associated with him, and I guess I can call him a friend for years.
Yep.
Tonight we're going to talk about the national political scene. I've had guests talking about local politics. I've had local candidates on. But tonight's our prediction of the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. And we always divide it up with me taking the Senate, Bob taking the House, and then last 5 minutes or so, we make a kind of a blending of it to give you some really good predictions. So, should I start with the Senate, Bob?
Yes, please.
Mike Lee, senator from Utah, was here speaking at the Wendy McCall Roundup for the Young Americas Foundation and their 300 high school students who were getting 3 days of great speakers and training. And I had a chance to talk to him a couple of times, but the last time it was 3 minutes. And when I walked up, another man and he were talking, and Mike said, 51 or 52 seats, we'll take control. And I said, Senator, I don't want to argue with you. And I said, by the way, here's my business card. I said, but it's six Senate seats. He says, oh, no, I can't believe that. He said, I'm going to write it down on the back of your card. Well,
yeah, right.
I expect to hear from him. No, he won't call me. Although we have some Mormon ties to a shirt-tail relative of mine. So there's Worthens in Utah, and he knew about them. And in fact, the city park in Cedar City is Worthen Park. But that was a distant cousin who was a pioneer there. I'll start out with... Did
your family actually come over in the Mayflower?
No, we would have been shooting that on those damn Brits. we were revolutionaries from the beginning. No, they weren't British, were they? Uh-huh. Anyway, I'm going to start out with the U.S. Senate. And first of all, I'm going to take the two people I think that are going to have a runaway race. You haven't heard it from anyone else. All the polls and procrastinators and the pundits, yeah, they are that too. Yeah. And they're saying that the races are tight. And it's because they don't know how to factor in the undecideds and the wave. That's surprisingly probably the biggest victory on Tuesday will be Walker. Remember the football player?
Yeah.
And he's running against an incumbent
Warnock, yep.
Yeah, Warnock. Boy, they've hit him with all sorts of terrible scandals about his life.
Yeah.
20 years ago, 15 years ago. Boy, I have those.
Can I interrupt you one thing about it? Here's a guy who won the national championship. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. You don't think that girls were kind of, trying to notch him, and so on and so forth?
The song I learned in high school: "You got to be a football hero to get along with the beautiful gals." So he was a football hero, and
with a Heisman Trophy and a national championship.
Right.
But hey,
but he is proud of his Christianity.
Yeah.
He is stimulated and making decisions based on it, and part of that life, the Christian life, which I am part of, is that you're forgiven for your sins, you are not necessarily sinless when you become a Christian.
By the way, none of this is proven either, by the way.
Yeah, well, Herschel has been in a tight race, they say. All of a sudden, the polls are breaking toward him. I tell people the polls are something that's in transition. Look at them. The first poll you will see is on an issue or a candidate is all adults. Wait a second. All adults in the United States include 30 million at least non-resident aliens from south of the border. At any given time, it includes 5,000 prisoners in jail. And so, those people aren't going to be able to vote. The next poll is a little better. It's registered voters. And you'll notice all of a sudden the conservative candidates are doing better. The conservative issue is doing better. About 2 weeks ago, all the polls went to likely voters. Now, to be a likely voter in the parlance of, say, for instance, the Republican Party, is that you voted twice in the last 4 general elections.
Oh, wait a minute, you didn't vote twice in the election, you voted 2 different elections, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're not Democrats.
There you go.
You have participated in 2 of the 4 elections. And so that gets you to people that are likely to vote. And all of a sudden, the more conservative candidate, the more conservative issue, it's the ballot measure, it's moving ahead, and that creates a trend. And Herschel Walker has moved in some of the polls to 5 to 8 points ahead of Warnock. He could be the biggest spread of any Republican challenging a Democrat incumbent in this election. He's going to win. He's going to win big. I'll be surprised if he doesn't break well over 55% of the vote. His race really is against the Republican running against a Democrat incumbent in Nevada, Paul Laxalt. Same kind of trend. All of a sudden, Laxalt's moving ahead by 6 or 8%. So both those guys are going to be elected with over 55% of the vote in those states.
Yeah.
So those are sure winners, and I like to call it a horse race between each of them to see who is the biggest winner. Let's talk about some people that are moving ahead, but they're not 8 or 10 points in the polls now. They're all of a sudden 1% or 2% or 4%. It's 48. An incumbent that has 48 at this time isn't going to get any more. They're all going to go to the opponent or not vote. So those incumbents are in trouble. Surprise is in New Hampshire. The senator there is Hassan. She's been there, I think, for 2 terms, and she's being opposed by a retired general. He doesn't run as a general. I think he was a 2-star and ended his career.
Major general.
Yeah, 10 years ago, and went into business. His name is Bolduc, B-O-L-D-A-U. And he's now moving ahead in the polls, and that's going to be another win. So on the East Coast, we've got Georgia and New Hampshire. As we come across the country, we probably next will come to Arizona. And again, the same kind of thing. We have a 2-term ex-astronaut, husband of a congressional a female member of Congress who was shot in an assassination attempt where 6 other people were killed. And again, it wasn't Republicans shooting her, it was crazy. as is true of most political violence.
All of them, basically.
Well, the guy who shot up the Republicans playing baseball, he wasn't crazy. He was a socialist. Bernie Sanders.
That's true. But he's crazy anyway.
Yeah. Well,
we can talk about that actually. Assassination. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So, in Arizona, it's been a tight race between Senator Kelly, that I was alluding to, and a young man named Masters, and he has run a tough campaign. He has been trailing in most polls, and one of the concerns there is a libertarian candidate taking some of the vote away from him at every poll, and that candidate last week removed himself from the race and threw his support to Masters. So that's going to be a more comfortable victory over Kelly than people expected. I would guess he's going to win by maybe 2%.
Can I interrupt you just 1 minute, because in the state of Arizona there's also a governor's race.
Oh yeah.
And this woman named Lake.
She's so pretty.
Oh man, yeah, good
TV
woman,
star.
That's for sure. Anyway, she now is ahead and so on, and that could very well be when she on the ticket. People going to vote for her are going to vote for the Republican.
Right.
They're going to vote the straight ticket.
Right, and
very seldom do people split the ballot.
Well, so that's 3 seats. It gets surprising after that. Nevada, Arizona, New Hampshire, and Georgia. Mm-hmm. The next race is a real surprising one. A woman won the Republican nomination. Her husband is a 20-year Army officer, I think he was colonel, who was blinded by a LUD in Afghanistan. And she was a nurse with 3 kids in Washington, and when he was in the hospital in the East, she went there and made sure he was getting the proper treatment, went to the VA, stayed on top of the VA that everything was being done right, and then he said, I want to go back. And
that's right. He ended up serving as an officer
Yeah.
in the Army, blind.
Yes, thanks to her.
Wow.
So now she files against a 40-year political from Washington, and I think 4-term senator.
Yeah,
started out as a congressman, and what was her name? Murray.
Yeah.
Smiley has moved ahead of Murray in the polls. So one of the shocks to everyone of election night is a Republican winning the Senate seat in the state of Washington. They haven't had a Republican senator there going back to the 70s and 80s. Both Senate seats have been Democrat. But the waves are shifting. Doesn't pertain to the Senate, but a Republican woman is about to win the governorship of Oregon, where there hasn't been a Republican in office for 40 years.
I wonder if Portland insurrection had anything to do with this.
Well, part of her story is that she loved to go downtown Portland with her 3 kids and shop at a independent bookstore.
Yeah.
And it became unsafe, and she didn't want her kids to see people defecating and the damage that had been done to the businesses in Portland and the violence there. So back to the Senate. If Smiley wins in Washington, that gets us up to 5 Republicans, and I will review them again before I throw it to Bob. One that has been back and forth on the radar of the Republican Party, but he's been a strong candidate. That's a 2-term senator from Colorado, Bennett. And grassroots campaign has brought a man named O'Day, that's ODEA, even with him. And I'm predicting that the red wave across the country is going to carry O'Day in and defeat Bennett. So just to go back over them.
Well, I want you to stop a minute just because I know you know about this and so on. What about the Republicans who are running, incumbents, and in fact the two empty seats, Ohio and Pennsylvania and North Carolina?
I apologize. I told you I'd go over that first.
Yeah.
I don't see any Republican incumbent. And by the way, it was 14-21. 21 in this, see, only a third of the Senate runs every 3 years, as you know.
Yeah.
And this class ended up with 35.
Yeah.
And I don't see any Republican seat, and several of them, like Ohio with
Well, now keep in mind, that's not a Republican. That's not an incumbent there. That's an open seat.
An open, but always Republican.
Yeah, it's been Republican late. Yeah.
And he looks like he's doing really well.
Yeah.
And they took a incredible attack on the Senator Johnson from.
Yeah, it's amazing, and he's going to win. It's as simple as
they
that.
poured money into trying to defeat him in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So their last hope was to beat the Republicans
in Pennsylvania.
where
North Carolina too, though. Keep in mind.
Yeah. They throw money in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But Emmett Oz, a talk show doctor,
Yeah.
ran against a
sitting lieutenant governor of the state of Pennsylvania. A Democrat.
No, in the Republican primary.
Okay,
against a businessman and longtime Republican, and narrowly beat him. And so the Democrats thought the Republican Party split. We've got it.
Yeah.
Now the seat was held by Senator Toomey, who stepped down, a Republican.
Right.
It's frequently been a Republican seat, but it's always been moderate.
Yeah.
So they figured they had Emmett Oz beat, and they put up the lieutenant governor. And the lieutenant governor's history is that he's never had a job.
Mm-hmm.
He was the mayor of a small city, 3,000 people, and his parents
supported him.
Yeah, wealthy family, and they supported him.
Yeah.
He bought income property. You know how that's not a real job to take care of your rentals. And
I don't know a lot about that. He didn't take care of them, obviously.
No. And he, notably over the years of his writings and stuff, wasn't the brightest bulb in the universe, but he had a stroke 5 months ago.
Yeah. He had the same thing I have, AFib, but he didn't take care of it.
Yeah, and it really, it's a sad situation that his people insisted he continue to run. We might be in trouble there if the Democratic Party had caused him to step down and they'd put up a strong candidate.
Yeah.
But
they didn't.
It was kind of tight, and he really couldn't give speeches. Now, whether that's his noted lack of IQ or the stroke, he wasn't doing public appearances. Finally, he granted...
This is after the stroke then, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, he granted debate.
Yeah.
And he insisted that it be 5 questions, that it be on teleprompter, and the Republicans went along with that, realizing that he could read something better than hear it and then respond. But he still stumbled over. I mean, big thing in Pennsylvania.
Did you watch it?
No, I saw clips.
Yeah, clips. Yeah. I didn't watch any of them.
Some of the big thing in one of the big issues in Pennsylvania is fracking, because they have a big reserve of natural gas, and it brings a lot of money and power to.
That's where oil was discovered.
Yeah,
the original field.
Oh, Penn oil. Okay. so he, in the debate, said, he was asked, "Are you for fracking?" And he just stumbled over, "Yeah, I'm for fracking." Now, they have him on tape 6 months before being against it.
Yeah.
And he double spoke, like, "I'm for fracking," well, I was not for fracking. And it just showed that he isn't capable of being a senator.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, we've had politicians from Woodrow Wilson to Franklin Delano Roosevelt,
Right,
who ended up with their wives really running the show.
I don't know about FDR so much, but certainly Wilson's. Wilson's wife was the president, and he was a second wife too, by the way.
Yeah. You never met Eleanor Roosevelt, did
Eleanor
you?
she was the first lady that really was important. She was after he died, she became a very influential person. If a Democrat wanted to get elected, you get her endorsement. You went a long ways.
I think she became an ambassador to the UN at one point.
I think she did, yeah.
And so, notably and anecdotally, Fetterman, Emmett Oz' opponent, the Democrat, his wife is very strong-willed.
Yeah.
And the fact that he kept running, that he wasn't removed from so the Democrats could have a better candidate,
Yeah.
has a lot to do with her. Some people say Dr. Joe, that's Mrs. Biden, their doctorates in something.
Yeah. She's kind of in the same way, though.
Yeah. Notably, I would say that
he's running the show.
she maybe, at least, he wouldn't be able to do the things he's doing without her care.
Just to get cleared up there, that Woodrow Wilson was in a bed. He got a stroke. He was crossing the country, and he tried to get the League of Nations in the U.S., which the U.S., although they were this is Wilson's top project, the U.S. Senate never actually got U.S. in the League of Nations.
Right.
And she was in charge. If you wanted to see the president, you went to see her first.
Yeah, well, see, I come from a conservative Midwestern family, and it was the League of Notions.
Oh, okay.
That's what we called it.
Well, it wasn't successful, put it that way.
So on election night, as
World
these
War
races come up, watch for Bolduc in New Hampshire, Walker in Georgia, Laxall in Nevada, Masters in Arizona, Smiley in Washington, and for my sixth pick, O'Day in Colorado. Now there's talk that some other races may surprise us. I tried to find a way to say that Blumenthal could be beat.
Where? Blumenthal is in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
Connecticut, yeah.
Some people say he could be beat. Great candidate against him, but I couldn't find any trend or polls that would cause that to, some of the polls have him as high as 17-point victory, and that can't be overcome.
Yeah.
So, Bob, that's what people need to look for on election night, to see Worthen was wrong.
Yeah. The bottom line is, even if all the Democrats, if the Republicans all keep their seats, and the Democrats we only need one seat. I say we, the Republicans. I'll admit that that's we're partially to that. Only need one seat, whereas the Democrats have to hold on to all of those seats. Every one of 7 of them. If they lose one, even, we're in 51. It's a 51-49 deal. Although I agree with you. There's a lot of seats really in play, and I think going to be a big surprise.
Well, and
especially to the media.
The mantra of, and it's even more, so much more in your congressional races, of faith. None of these candidates hide from their Christianity. Some wear it, like Walker, all across their body all the time. Others maybe wear a cross. None of them hide from their current love of family, their patriotism, and focus on the issues. And those issues, no matter what, the abortion issue, which is being fought through the states as it should be, is running 5th to 7th as an issue in every poll.
Yeah, the bottom. It's at the bottom. It was a big deal this summertime, but it just didn't stick. It's like January 6th thing didn't stick.
Yeah, and
although it was a bad deal.
The
honestly.
issues have been the economy's stupid. By the way, that came from Clinton's Mr. Snake campaign manager. Carville, yeah. We call him Snakehead. Carville.
He was right.
Well, that was a loving term that Rush Limbaugh gave him.
Really?
And they were friends.
Yeah.
And so it's the economy stupid. It's inflation, which is part of the economy, but going and paying $6 a gallon for gas in California, where much of that is caused by our current governor, but everywhere in the country over $4 a gallon, and eggs, bread, milk, everything going up.
Yes.
10 to 15%.
Gas, especially.
Yeah. So the cost of living is transitory, but it's transitory from, that was what our wonderful Secretary of Treasury said.
Stop here 1 second. I've been to some gas stations. I've seen it more than once. Somebody has stuck a sticker on the pump saying, "I didn't vote for him."
That's wonderful. Well, it's everything has gone up. Rents are going up.
Yeah.
They have to because the taxes and everything. Right. And so people are really feeling it, really hurting. And we'll talk about some of the new constituencies coming to the Republican Party.
Right.
The Republican Party 50 years ago was the party of limousine liberals and rich. Well, there were always a lot of limousine liberals and rich in the Democrat Party, but now it's hard to find a outspoken conservative that's a billionaire. There are some, Teal, but most of the outspoken billionaires that are advocating for the Republican Party right now are libertarian, like Elon Musk. And so it has really become the party of the middle class, and in fact, lower middle class, the working and the working poor.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is this new constituency that you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So tell us where that all plays in Congress.
Well, I'll get to that because that's a big deal, and I'm going to get to that. Well, I guess we just talk right now. It's the Latino population. You call it Latino, Hispanic. I like to say Mexican people. That's basically what they're originally from Mexico. They don't get many Nicaragua, El Salvador.
In California, anyway.
Not only that, in Texas and places like that, there's a lot of places. Minnesota just has a huge population of Hispanics and hardworking people, because they are finally understanding that the Democrats aren't doing anything, aren't doing what they said they're going to do. And as I always, you heard me say this in public, Ronald Reagan is famous for the saying that the Hispanic population is Republican and they don't know it. And my clarification of that comment is that the Hispanics are Republicans and the Republicans don't know it. That's what they are. God-fearing, they're very religious, they're against abortion, they are for the death penalty. What else is it?
They are for educating their children.
Yeah, educate their children. Hard-working people. I never met
entrepreneurs,
more hard-working people in the country and so on. And don't ever accuse a Hispanic man of being gay because you've risked your life. So, and that's a minor thing. I don't want to get into that subject and so on. But it's not. That's at the very last part of it. So on. But that's the Republican credo, essentially, to a large degree. So these are really Republicans. But they've talked about, they've been, Hispanic population has been so, as the black population too, by the way, too. The capital with the capital B, I was like that one. The black population, they're also turning around too. Again, I have a little thought here about, I'll get into that some other time, but commercials feature a lot of black people these days. Why? Because they're in the middle class. A lot of people that have come up in the world that are of color and that, including the black people. At any rate, so to go back to the introduction of this whole talking about the House races, basically. Now we're talking about not like 34 or 35 races. We're talking about 435 races that are all. That's the way the system works. Is every congressman or woman has to, or anybody in between. There's a few of those. Has to, which is not being critical. That's the way it works. That's the way it is. They have to stand for re-election every 2 years. That's the way the system works, which is, by the way, very unusual for a democratic, for a democracy to have that kind of situation. No other country really has that you have to stand up for every 2 years. So that's a little difficult to do. However, I think that's going to be, as I've said many times before lately, in fact, it's a real bloodbath. I think it's going to be, for the Democrats, it's going to be a real bloodbath. Now, keep in mind, you correct me, Jim, if I get the numbers wrong, but it was after Clinton was elected, when the midterms came about. This is when he passed Medicare and all that stuff and Hillary was right there with him and so on. They passed Medicare, and they had control of the Senate by, they had, I think, to do the, what do you call it, the closure. They had enough seats, the senators, to go to closure, so they voted it in. And that didn't sit well with a lot of people. That may have been several different things. But anyway, the bottom line is that in that midterm election, he lost 53 seats in the House of Representatives, right, and I believe 8 senators. So now they didn't have the closure anymore.
By the way, I like to remind people, I predicted that on this show in 1994, and only one other person is on record on TV of predicting 53 seats in the House. Newt Gingrich.
Newt Gingrich, right. I do remember that. I interviewed a couple of guys that worked for Newt Gingrich down in LA one time. Anyway, so then, and the next one up was the Obama election in 2000, I think it was in 2000, no, 2008.
Yeah, this was the real Obamacare. The first was Hillary trying to do it.
And which got passed and so on. But 2010, 63 seats or something like that went into Republican hands. And they took over I don't know what happened in the Senate, but they actually took over the House at that point. That they had a majority, which the first time, I don't think they got a majority at 53, but at 64, the first time in 40 years.
Yeah,
that
the
was Republicans
54.
had a majority in the House. In fact, it really went back like 70 years. They only had 2 years, 1948, I guess it was, or something like 1946, and then in 1952, when Eisenhower got elected, they also had, just for 2 years. After that, it was all Democrats. There were Roosevelt, Truman.
Oh, that's how the country got so messed up over those years.
Well, it had to do with World War II and things like that and so on. But yes, oh yeah, like the guy said, the mayor of Chicago. Remember what was his name? They had a lot of scandals. They tried to make him the ambassador to Japan, and that didn't work out. He resigned, in fact, as mayor. What was the expression? He says, "You never pass up an emergency to improve government." Well, boy, World War II was a real emergency, and that's when all those taxes came in, withholding tax and others taxes and so on. Wartime is a very big thing for Democrats especially. And keep in mind, it was Wilson in World War I, and it was Roosevelt in World War II. There are Democratic presidents. We talk about that at length and so on. At any rate.
And Truman in Korea.
And Truman, yeah, and Truman too, because right there. Although I think he was a pretty good president, really. The bottom line. Anyway, and that was 53. But in 1932, Roosevelt was elected president of the United States, and at the same time, 93 seats changed hands from Republicans to Democrats in that area. Now, of course, now we were really into depression. 3 years later, 3 years after the crash, the market crashed, and banks closed and so on. He closed all the banks for several months or something like that, and so on. It was a bad time. But 93 changed hands. Now, I'm not going to say that this is the same situation as it is in this country at this point in time, but I think it's beyond the Democrat-Republican. Now people are really suffering. This inflation, inflation especially.
Crime.
And crime, I mean, all that stuff that's going on in New York. Would you ride the subway in New York these days? I sure as hell wouldn't, and a lot of people aren't. Ridership in the subway in New York has gone to almost zero. Could you blame them? At any rate, keep that in mind when we're talking about this. This is a real situation. Okay, so it's hard to identify any particular race in that's 435. We're talking about it as far as a trend or something like that. Every race is the same. Let's keep in mind that a person who runs for the House of Representatives, which I did, by the way, in 1996 or something like that, at one point, I actually became a candidate for the congressional district, and I actually got 15,000 votes actually at the time. 1,500 maybe it was. I can't remember. It wasn't I didn't campaign very much. In fact, the last week I just quit answering the phone. At any rate, keep in mind that anybody can run. That's not true of a lot of places. In Britain, for example, if you want to run with a particular party, you have to get the authorization from the party's head in order to run for the conservative or Tory or liberal seat. And I think it's the same in Canada, places like that. So we're talking about personality situations in a lot of places. But there's a lot of things that happened, including what I talked about, the Hispanics. Number one was reapportionment. We had the census, and some states lost seats and some states won seats. As it turns out, California lost a seat, the state of Illinois lost a seat, and the state of New York lost a seat. And I think there was a couple other ones too. West Virginia lost a seat, I believe it was, and some other ones and so on. But who got those seats? Well,
Texas.
New York, Texas. They got two new seats.
Florida
got one. And Montana got one. Finally, Montana used to have 2 representatives. Then the population increase got ahead of them, so they only had 1. They're back to 2. Maybe a lot of Los Angelinos are moving up there, or someplace up there, and so on in Montana. Anyway, now they got 2 seats, and they'll both be Republican seats. And of course, Texas is the same thing.
Now, give me some seats. Give me some that you've analyzed.
Well, based on that, besides that, what else was I going to say? The apportionment and so on. Well, let's get into the politics of it then. There are seats. The Latino vote is very strong. There's some districts, in fact, in Texas, that are 50% Latino, 3 of which are right on the border with Texas. And there's a good example of all those districts where Beto was a representative from El Paso, something like that. Has now changed hands, by the way, as Republican. Including the city of El Paso. There's 3 seats there, one of which just changed hand, a woman named Flores, right? Who was a beautician or something like that. I can't remember what she was and so on. But
she was born in Mexico City.
She was a
naturalized
citizen. She's a citizen now and so on. She beat the incumbent. The incumbent had, I guess, retired or died or something like that. He quit. So they had to have an election just a few months ago, in fact. And she won. A Republican won in the district and so on.
90% Democrat registration.
And about 60-80% Latino in the district and so on. Well, there's 2 other districts on either side of that. She's running now for the seat for a fully 2-year term. There's 2 districts on either side of that are also Democratic and have been for years. All those districts along the border were Democratic, and all of those seats, I'll predict this, will probably go Republican.
Oh wait, one is the last non-abortion moderate Democrat, Cuellar. You saying she's going to beat him?
No, I don't believe she's in that. She doesn't in that seat. Who's she?
Or the one of the 2.
That is another seat. In fact, now they still say that he's the only member of Congress that is against abortion.
Only Democrat member.
Democrat, yeah. I'm sorry to say that. The Democrat, Nancy tells everybody to vote the same way. He doesn't on that issue. He does not do that, and he better be, because that's the other one is they're against abortion. Latinos, they don't do that. Anyway, that's what they believe. They're totally against abortion and so on. Well, and he goes along with that. However, he's in trouble too.
I'm going to be nasty. One of the reasons Hispanics, besides their faith, are against abortion is that Planned Parenthood has placed 80% of its abortion.
I call it the industrial complex of the Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, they've placed 80% of their offices and abortion clinics in black neighborhoods.
Yeah.
To carry out Sanger, the founder's desire to eradicate the black race.
Yeah.
And people don't know that about Planned Parenthood, that it was...
They probably also don't know you protested in front of a Planned Parenthood facility here in Santa Barbara one time, didn't you?
Yeah, once. I promised the DA I'd only do it once, but I did it because I promised my radio audience at the time that I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And I insisted on being arrested, even though the police officer said, "Oh, Jim, just leave their parking lot." Right. I was reading my Bible in the Planned Parenthood parking lot.
Right. Anyway, those seats. Now you talk about the other things and so on. One of the other things is, I think it's like 35 Democratic representatives decided to retire. How do you retire as a politician anyway? Anyway, they decided to retire, and most of those people, which made an open seat now in that district, and they retired, and a lot of them were high up. They were members. They had been around a long time. This has been happening for several months now, probably a year, in fact, what's been happening, because they saw the handwriting on the wall, and boy, are they going to be right. An open seat is now really, keep in mind that an incumbent always has the advantage in any seat, to keep he or she can to keep the seat that they're elected to. When it's open, it becomes a whole different ballgame, especially with regard to progressives, and to use a polite term, for the people that run against. All of a sudden, they run in that district and so on, so that they can get into. They didn't retire. They didn't quit right away. They're going to serve out the term now that they're elected to, which of course will be end now in January. Thus makes an open seat, and there's 35 of them. If you look at Cook Political Report, just type in Cook Political, and then you can see the thing. And they say that the seats that are up for grabs, or in the
toss-up.
Yeah, toss-ups. That's it, toss-ups and so on and so forth. There are like 50 different seats. A lot of them are open. In fact, almost all of them are open seats and so on that are toss-ups now. And the Republicans also have their share, but it's like a third of what the Democrats are up against and so on. Now, as far as individual seats,
before you go there, I want to point out, and I think you'll concur, in the reapportionment of the Congress after the last census.
That's what I was going to say too. It's what they call gerrymandering.
Yeah,
and the Democrats do just as much as the Republicans.
Yeah, the Republicans though have won over the last decade more and more state houses, more and more governorships. At one time they had 33 of the 50 governors. I think they're back down to 28, but that's who reapportions by our Constitution.
Yeah.
That's who reapportions.
Right.
And so they obviously cut it a little bit toward their own party, which has always been true.
That's just the way it is. Gerrymandering is part of the process. If you don't like it, I don't know, do something else. But that's always going to be that way.
Yeah, it's funny. Somebody asked me.
The Democrats do it just as much as the Republicans.
Somebody asked about the
maybe worse
the long, thin congressional seat that Lois Capps had.
Yeah, right.
Well, they reapportioned it, and now if you look at it, it goes from Monterey to Ventura, along the coast for Salud Carbajal to give him a safe seat. Just as much gerrymandering here.
Yeah, but it's in a commission and so on. But even so, they want to keep it the way it is, especially when you got the Democratic governor and, of course, the legislative bodies here, the Senate and the Assembly, are dominated by the Democrats by supermajorities.
I took you away from going to some of those seats.
Well, that's part of it and so on. And that, of course, that like in the Texas seats, they made sure in Texas those seats had a Republican. It was dominated by the Republicans, and the same in North Carolina. By the way, North Carolina also gained a seat and so on. And that's another area in the apportionment. In North Carolina gained a seat, Oregon gained a seat. Oregon's a blue state if there ever was one and so on. But there's like in the new district of that, and I think the legislator in somehow or other in Oregon. They had made up a seat that's going to be Republican now. And the same is true in North Carolina. They have this open seat and so on. LA lost a seat, and guess what? It mostly was in Los Angeles. So that the only black person now that's serving in the city, in that whole LA county, it used to be 3 different black people that were elected to Congress and so on. There's only one left.
And she's crazy.
And that's Maxine Waters, who was calling for, I believe, Donald Trump's impeachment when he's at the top of the elevator. He didn't even have to he couldn't get down to the bottom. She was calling for his impeachment. She did, actually, right after he got elected. That same night was going to be impeach him. You don't hear much from her anymore. I don't know, strange thing. And then, of course, like I say, it's individual people. There was a guy in the 3rd district in Wisconsin, which is a very rural area that has some cities, but most of it a rural area, if you look it up. There's a guy named Joe Hand, H-A-N-D, and he's going to retire. He almost got beaten in the election in 2020 by, I think it's a military guy, and now he's running again. Of course, Hand's not running and so on. It's almost a certainty that will become a Republican district in Wisconsin. And another one that's in real trouble is like I said, remember, keep in mind, New York lost a seat. However, that also is an area where, even though they have they have a Democratic governor and all that, but when they reapportioned out and so on, they made this one seat, a sitting Maloney, a sitting congressman there, it made his district into a separate place and so on, so that now it's more Republican, and he is the head of the Democratic Congressional Committee to elect other Congresspeople.
And he's going to lose.
And he's going to lose. They had to put a lot of money in it just in the last few days. Put a lot of money in his campaign to save him, and they may not.
I want to bring you west. Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona. There's a district on the border in Arizona, and he is a Democrat, and he's in trouble. There's also a district in California on the border, a Democrat. He's in trouble.
How about
the immigration? It's totally immigration.
How about Nevada?
Yeah, Nevada, as it turns out, was very hard hit by the pandemic. Obviously with Las Vegas and that. But there's as I understand it, there's 3 seats. What did I put them here? 1, 3, and 4, I think it is. In Nevada. Nevada has 4 seats, I believe. They didn't gain a seat this time around, but the state of Nevada actually has 4 congressional seats, 6 electoral votes, which were important for Donald Trump because they lost in Nevada, supposedly. Anyway, they're very hard hit and so on. And the gas price is higher in Nevada than it is in California. How can that even possibly be? Anyway, and a huge Latino population. they're the people that operate, that service all those hotels and things. That they go up there. I had a lot of people moving from Santa Barbara, Latino people that I knew, moved up there. The whole family. It wasn't just the man and the woman and the kids. It was the cousins and everybody moved up to Nevada because that was where the employment was. And it's going to be very hard hit. And that will that will probably, as you said about the Senate race and so on, because they go in to vote for the Republican for the Senate and so on. Well, then it becomes very, as I say, very seldom do people split the ticket. They just, when they vote Republican at the top, they vote it all the way down. And I could go on and on about Montana. They're going to elect. They have one more seat. They're going to get again a guy, popular guy. I can't remember who it is and so on. Although my brother-in-law lives in his district and so on. He says he's going to get elected. Period. Actually, he's in the western part of the state, which has all the universities and colleges and so on. But there, they don't. You know, the Montana State and University of Montana and whatever else colleges they have there aren't necessarily the liberal bastions of other campuses around.
So, do you think we'll pick up one or two in Washington?
It's hard to say. I think I didn't really look at that one that close, but I think there's one seat there. Well, you can go to the map and you can see that the toss-up seats are either open or held by Democrat currently and so on. There's many more Democrats than there are Republicans. And this is Cook Republican, which is probably as nonpartisan as you're going to get as far as trying to analyze these things. They go by the polls and so on and so forth. But it's going to be very hit or miss. They're going to lose seats in West Virginia, by the way, lost a seat. That's too bad because there used to be a real Democratic state, as you know, because of the unions and all that, but become very much Republican. They actually have 2 Republican senators there. Well, that idiot, he pulled a fast one on us on that bill today, the Inflammation Act, relieving the Inflammation Act. At any rate, he got suckered into that deal too, by the way. There's other ones. And Ohio lost a seat, and Pennsylvania lost a seat. But those are pretty strong states, and of course there again the reapportionment and so on. They can make
They lost Democrat seats.
Yeah, they lost Democrat seats, right? That's going to be the same thing, and you'll see that in the news, I'm sure, when they do this coming Tuesday night, which I can't wait for. This is going to be a bloodbath, and they're going to be a real surprise. You want an insurrection? You're going to get an insurrection. It's called an election.
Well, wait. Hillary has talked about ugliness. I don't know how she can say how ugly the politics.
I'll get nasty about it now.
Well, look at her.
Yeah, I know.
Keep her off TV, and we'll have less ugliness in politics. Anyway, the election is going to really come down to those 3 issues, right? Crime, cost of living, and the economy in general.
Right. That's what it is. Abortion comes at the very bottom of the list. That doesn't affect many people.
The interesting thing I saw...
Well, I might say, just to give a joke here, if the Democrats are so... Because the decision of the Supreme Court wasn't abolishing abortion, it just put it in the states. Each state can do it. And of course, California, I would very much suspect you're going to pull into a McDonald's drive-in and you're going to say, what do you want? I'll have McDonald's, I'll have a Big Mac burger and some fries. And I need an abortion too. Can I get that here? You want that to go? I mean, it's going to be so easy. They're going to put you up in the best hotels too.
We're down to predictions. How many seats are the Republicans
I really couldn't say. They're definitely going to take over. There's no question about that. With a fairly good majority, that. Although
they only
and
need.
Kevin McCarthy would be the very good. He'll crack the whip with these people and so on. You won't see many, but you'll see a few people that won't vote for everything he does. Last time, like Nancy Pelosi, who has all the Democrats vote her way or else. Your parking space for the capital will be in West Virginia.
McCarthy held every Republican congressional seat in the last election, which is amazing.
Yeah, they gained.
Yeah, well, but First
Talk about coattails.
first thing, win your incumbents, and
Yeah.
he did it. And he says he's going to do it again. And
Well,
he will.
we got a couple of minutes here, but I'll just tell you one more thing. I don't think any of the California that they gained, they lost 7 seats in 2018. They gained back 4. Now, they didn't know. They didn't lose. I think they gained back all 4. They lost 4, and they gained back 4 in 2020 when Biden got elected. There are no coattails. Biden didn't have any coattails. They all got elected. They will get elected again.
They
may actually lose some seats in California.
Yeah. My prediction. Do you have any disagreement with my 6 senators?
No, not really. I wouldn't bet against it, I can tell you that. Maybe more.
And my prediction is, in looking at the toss-ups, and this is part of my analysis, if they're toss-up today in the polls, the way the polls are structured toward liberalism, if they're toss-up today, I give them all to the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because...
I won't say all, but I wouldn't be surprised me. One more, by the way, I'll give you one more. In this. Rhode Island has 2 congressional seats. They have been Democratic in Rhode Island since God created the earth, basically, or whatever. They may very well lose the Rhode Island 2nd District.
Just for old time's sake, doing the toss-ups and everything and giving them to the Republicans, you come to 50 and gain.
Yeah.
For old time's sake, I'm going to call 53.
53.
Let's
all
do
right,
it
for
again.
old time's sake, right.
And 6 in the Senate.
Okay, I'll give you a number. I would say, I agree with you. I think if they got 50 seats, I'd be real happy to see it. I'm just a Republican, that's what I want.
Well,
But there is another election. Keep in mind, it's not this election, it's the next election, which we will have. Democracy is as strong as it's ever been.
oh yeah, how can they say that we're destroying democracy when the essence of democracy is people getting to vote?
Yeah,
and
that's what we have. It's a messy process, but as Churchill says, it's better than the alternative,
well,
which is Adolf Hitler.
and as Benjamin Franklin said, he gave us a republic. It's up to us to keep it.
Now, yes, let's keep it.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you. It's been a pleasure, Jim.